Welcome back to Midnight Railway Tales. Find a comfortable corner, pull up your blanket, and imagine you are boarding tonight's train with me, leaving the noise of the city far behind. The gentle clatter of the rails blends with the steady drum of rain on glass, and soon the world outside becomes nothing more than shifting shadows and the ghostly shimmer of passing lights. You feel the gentle sway of the carriage as it curves away from familiar streets, traveling westward through the sleeping countryside. And in this quiet cocoon, you settle in for a journey not measured in miles, but in stories whispered along the Atlantic shore. Our journey tonight will take us through the windy Atlantic coast of Cornwall, England. In your mind's eye, the landscape grows wild and elemental. Granite cliffs plunging into restless surf, grass bending under the weight of a salt-soaked wind. The fields and hedgerows vanish behind veils of rain, but here and there you glimpse the faint golden glow of distant windows, solitary cottages huddled against the storm, each light a promise of warmth and safety. And as we listen to the rain and the rhythm of the train, we will explore the story of lighthouses, the silent sentinels of the sea. These beacons have stood watch for centuries, holding vigil through storm and darkness, their lights offering hope to countless mariners. Tonight, as the train rocks gently beneath you, you become a traveler between worlds, one foot in the present, one drifting back through layers of history, guided by the faint glow of ancient fires. If you enjoy journeys like this, a like on the video helps our train travel further. Thank you so much. Now the train doors have closed. Close your eyes and listen. Our journey begins. The wheels beneath you sing softly, and you imagine your path tracing the old coastal rails of Cornwall, where cliffs rear out of the rain and the Atlantic churns below. In these lonely reaches, the first lights that ever guarded the shore were nothing more than bonfires, ruddy blazes atop headlands, tended by unseen hands against the elements. You picture these fires flickering bravely in the wind, watched by those on land and at sea alike. There is something deeply human about this, about gathering flame against the darkness, hoping to save others from the rocks below. Historians still argue whether these earliest beacon fires were always meant for navigation or sometimes served more mysterious ritual purposes. Some suggest they might have guided travelers between worlds, both living and spirit, especially in regions where folklore ran deep and the wild sea seemed haunted. You let your thoughts drift through the mist and the soft, persistent rush of rain, feeling the age-old comfort of light in the night, a promise that you too will find your way safely home. As the train glides steadily westward, the soundscape settles into a tranquil rhythm, the gentle repetitive lull of wheels against rails mingling with the distant hush of rain. Your eyelids grow heavy, soothed by the motion, and your mind slips back even further beyond written history, into a time when legends and landscape were almost indistinguishable. The coast you pass is blanketed in a ghostly fog, and through it you sense the echoes of ancient fires burning atop high cliffs, flames both practical and sacred, before records, before Rome, before even the first stone towers. People of these lands watched the sea with wary reverence. The Atlantic, so immense and restless, was home to both bounty and danger. On stormy nights, villagers would gather driftwood and peat, setting ablaze great signal fires on promontories, early warnings and hopeful prayers interwoven in every flickering spark. You can almost smell the sharp tang of burning wood carried on a salt-laden wind, and feel the collective hush as distant figures kept watch through rain and mist. Historians still argue whether these prehistoric lights were simple guides for fishermen or symbols woven deeply into the spiritual life of the community. Were the fires meant to welcome the living or to guide the souls of the departed safely to the other world? Some archaeologists point to ancient standing stones and burial mounds overlooking the sea, suggesting a connection between Lightland and those who have passed on. You imagine a solitary figure tending the flame, their silhouette lost in the swirling fog, reciting words older than any language now spoken. Quirky tales abound in these misty stretches of history. There are stories still whispered in Cornwall and Brittany of will-o'-the-wisps, strange blue lights darting across marshes, said to be playful spirits or tricksters leading travelers astray. Local legend claims that once a particularly mischievous jack-o'-lantern was so offended by being mistaken for a warning fire that he lit a circle of flames around a lost sailor, guiding him in dizzying loops until dawn. In another tale, a community blamed a series of shipwrecks on a rival village, claiming their beacon bonfire was in truth a witch's fire to lure ships to destruction. As you gaze out the window, the landscape shimmers with uncertainty, fact and folklore weaving seamlessly together, the past just a breath away. The rain intensifies, drumming on the roof, as if urging you further into the unknown. Your journey is not just along the rails, but deep into the misty memory of Europe's earliest guiding lights, where every flame held both promise and mystery, and the sea kept its secrets well. The train rounds a sweeping bend, the tracks hugging the coast so closely you almost feel the spray of invisible waves. The steady pulse of the rails and the hypnotic dance of raindrops against your window lull you deeper back to an era where stories begin to take more solid shape, where the world's greatest lighthouse stands not in legend, but in stone and flame. You travel south in your imagination along ancient trade routes to a distant shore, where the Pharos of Alexandria towers over the blue-green Mediterranean, its fire mirrored in the restless hearts of sailors from every corner of Europe. You are now passing through a world where city-states and empires rise and fall, where navigation is both an art and a gamble. The Pharos, built over 2 millennia ago, was a marvel of its age, a 3-tiered monument of white stone rising some 400 feet above the island of Pharos, guiding ships safely into the busy harbor of Alexandria. Historians still argue whether its fabled mirrors could truly focus the sun's rays enough to set sails alight on the horizon, or whether this is just another shimmer of myth. Yet none dispute its awe-inspiring presence, a beacon so bright it was counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. You imagine the nightly ritual as dusk falls, keepers ascending endless ramps within the Pharos, carrying bundles of resinous wood and oil, stoking the great fire at its summit. Below the city is alive with music and market cries, but at the tower's peak, only the wind and the roar of flame keep the keepers company. It's said that in clear weather, the light could be seen for 30 miles at sea, a miraculous reach for its time. Quirky tales cling to the stones of the Pharos. One legend tells that in a time of siege, the tower's mirrors were turned inward, dazzling enemy troops on shore and confusing would-be invaders. Another story claims that at least once an overzealous keeper added too much oil to the fire, sending a plume of smoke so high that even the city's astronomers wrote it into their scrolls. You follow the thread of this light across the sea, sensing how its radiance inspired others. Soon, copycat towers and beacons appeared from Spain to Sicily, each trying to recapture a little of Alexandria's grandeur. Historians debate whether any of these mini-Pharos truly matched the original's brilliance, or if in chasing its legend, they kindled a new tradition, one where Europe's coasts would never again be left in darkness. As your train glides on, the night grows deeper, and the memory of the pharaohs glimmers like a promise ahead. The rain slackens, and you sense the lineage of beacons stretching out, guiding not just ships, but the very journey you travel tonight. The rails sing beneath you a gentle vibration passing through the soles of your feet, a reminder of your passage along ancient routes. The air in the cabin feels warmer, touched by the lingering energy of invention and empire. Now, as you journey further, the coastline of Europe emerges marked not only by memory, but by the enduring stones of Rome. Your train glides parallel to what was once the frontier of a vast world, the Roman Empire, whose ambitions reached the restless Atlantic. Along these shifting shores, the Romans built towers that stood as both sentinels and signposts, structures that some say were true lighthouses, while others argue they were military watchtowers, symbols of dominion and warning. Historians still debate which towers truly bore flames to guide ships and which were simply the eyes of the empire watching for trouble. Yet a few, like the Tower of Hercules in La Coruña, Spain, and the lighthouse at Dover, England, stand as living relics of an age when Rome sought to tame the ocean's wildness. Imagine the life along these borders. You sense the daily movement of legionaries and merchants, their sandals clapping on wet stone as they haul oil for the great lamps that burned atop the towers. In the dusk, Roman engineers climb spiral stairs with careful precision, tending fires fed with wood resin and olive oil. The flames are reflected in polished metal or early mirrors, sending uncertain signals across the waves. Some sources claim that at La Coruña, the original Roman lamp mechanism was so clever it could be seen far beyond the normal reach of fire. Quirky details surface from old texts and crumbling ruins. In some places, coins and small offerings were found at the bases of these towers, tokens left by sailors seeking luck, or perhaps gratitude for safe landfall. In Britain, it's said that enterprising soldiers sometimes hosted impromptu markets by the base of the lighthouse, trading salted fish and pottery with passing crews while keeping one wary eye on the horizon. As you look out the train window, the present and past blur together. You sense that these towers were more than stone. They were hope, authority, and the promise of safe passage. Yet, as the wind whistles around your carriage, you remember the lingering debate. Were the Romans the first true masters of lighthouse engineering? Or did they simply lay the groundwork for a more luminous age to come? The answer shifts like mist, visible only for a moment before slipping away with the tide. The train presses onward, hugging the coastline as Europe's history flickers past in the darkness, one guiding light at a time. The gentle rhythm of the train blends with the patter of rain, creating a soft cocoon that shelters you from the world outside. The carriage glides on, following a line that once echoed with the footfalls of monks, fishermen, and villagers. Those who in the shadowy centuries after Rome's fall became the new guardians of Europe's coastlines. You pass through an age often called dark, but you sense in the flickering of distant fires an enduring resilience, a quiet ingenuity that keeps hope alive even when empires have faded. After the collapse of Roman authority, the grand towers fell into ruin, but the need for guidance at sea never waned. Along rugged headlands and isolated isles, the people of early medieval Europe revived the practice of beacon fires. Some were built by monks, whose monasteries clung to remote cliffs, their spires rising above the spray. At places like Lindisfarne or Skellig Michael, you imagine hooded figures kindling flames at dusk, the light serving as both a guide for lost mariners and a silent prayer for safe passage. Historians still argue whether these beacons were practical aids or spiritual offerings blending the sacred and the everyday. Sometimes these fires became tangled in the affairs of war and warning. In times of danger, villagers on watch would light great bonfires to signal the approach of raiders, invaders, or even the sudden wrath of the sea itself. The difference between a navigational beacon and a call to arms could blur with the shifting winds. In Brittany and Wales, tales persist of warning fires mistaken for welcoming lights of mariners guided to safety or to ruin by flames glimpsed through the mist. A quirky fragment lingers from these centuries in certain Irish coastal villages. It was customary to keep a special sea candle burning in a window during storms, its flame fueled with oil blessed by the local priest. According to local legend, the candle's light not only guided ships, but also warded off mischievous spirits said to ride the wind on stormy nights. In one village, the eldest woman was charged with tending this flame, and her careful watch was believed to bring luck and calm to the entire community. As you rest in the warmth of your seat, you sense how these early medieval lights, though humble, became both literal and symbolic anchors for their people. The world outside your window is shrouded in rain and history, each drop on the glass, a memory of hope, warning, or prayer cast into the night. The debate persists, were these beacons remnants of a lost Roman order, or the seeds of a uniquely medieval tradition, one that would blaze forth in new forms as Europe's coastlines came alive with light once again. The train presses on the past, softly illuminating your journey, and the night holds many more stories yet to be revealed. You travel onward, lulled by the persistent thrum of the wheels, your gaze drifting to where the inky darkness outside merges with the restless sea. Here in the half-light between memory and dream, the coastline transforms into a stage for cunning and peril, where not all lights are what they seem. As medieval Europe recovers from centuries of uncertainty, new threats emerge on the waves most fearsome of all the longships of the Vikings, whose sudden raids leave villages and monasteries trembling. In these times, the role of coastal fires becomes tangled with deception. Historians still argue whether tales of false lights are mere folklore or harsh reality, whether some coastal folk, driven by desperation or malice, truly lured ships onto rocks to plunder their wrecks. Along the Cornish and Breton shores, rumors persist of men known as wreckers, who on stormy nights covered beacons or hung lanterns on the horns of cattle, moving them along the cliffs to mimic the safe passage of another ship. A mariner peering through sheets of rain could be misled, steering his vessel onto hidden reefs while would-be rescuers waited in the shadows. Your imagination conjures up such a night, the wind howling across the moor, the rain falling in cold, stinging sheets, a lonely keeper tending a true beacon, while elsewhere a ring of torches blazes with sinister intent. The debate remains, did these stories grow in the telling, or were they grounded in grim necessity? In some regions, authorities posted rewards for those who exposed wreckers, while in others, the line between lifesaver and looter blurred perilously thin. Quirky tales wind through this shadowed history. In Brittany, there is the legend of the Lantern of the Dead, a spectral light said to appear before storms. Villagers told children to stay indoors if they saw its flickering blue glow, lest they be swept out to sea by vengeful spirits. In Western Ireland, it's whispered that some beacons were guarded by giant black dogs, whose howls could be heard for miles, and whose eyes, it was claimed, shone brighter than the lantern itself. Yet not all was darkness and deceit. Amid the chaos, small acts of bravery shine through. Records tell of villagers who braved the surf to pull survivors from wrecks, who tended beacon fires even as waves crashed over the rocks, refusing to let the light die. As you listen to the soft, reassuring movement of the train, you sense that every flame along the shore carried with it a complex legacy, hope and hazard, kindness and cunning woven together in the long, dark nights of Europe's wild Atlantic edge. The night grows quieter as the train glides along the coast, the gentle rocking encouraging you to relax deeper into your seat. Beyond the rain-slicked window, the cliffs grow steeper, their shadows etched by flashes of distant lightning. In this era, as Europe enters the high Middle Ages, the keepers of coastal fires often become monks and holy men, their lives dedicated to tending both the soul and the shore. You feel the presence of stone abbeys perched atop windswept promontories, their bell towers and lantern rooms standing vigil over the endless churn of the sea. In these places, monasteries become havens of both spiritual guidance and practical wisdom. The monks who inhabit them are skilled not just in prayer, but in science, astronomy, and the delicate arts of navigation. Historians still argue whether the knowledge held in these cloistered communities, especially their precise observations of tides, stars, and currents, was shared openly with sailors or guarded as sacred secrets. Some suggest that the rhythms of monastic life governed by bell and candle echoed the cycles of the sea itself, and that their lights were as much about ordering time as they were about saving lives. You picture the routine. A monk climbs the steps of the lantern tower, each dusk, his habit flapping in the wind, a lamp of whale oil or tallow in hand. He trims the wick and murmurs a blessing, watching as the flame grows and sends its pale glow across the breakers. Inside the abbey, another brother charts the positions of stars and records strange sightings. A green flash at sunset, a phantom ship glimpsed through fog. It is said that at St. Catherine's Oratory on the Isle of Wight, a tower built by a repentant knight still stands its lonely light once visible to pilgrims and merchants alike. A quirky thread runs through these sacred lights. In Scotland, stories persist of illuminated manuscripts written in secret by lighthouse keeper monks, containing not only scripture, but star maps, tidal calendars, and in the margins, notes on brewing ale or the best time to fish for herring. Some believe a few such tomes survive locked away in private collections, or hidden deep within abbey vaults, their pages alive with the scent of salt and wax. As the train hums along the darkened rails, you sense how in this age science and superstition lived side by side. The monks' careful observations gave rise to new techniques in navigation, yet their lanterns still burned with mystery symbols of both earthly skill and divine protection. The debate continues. Were these holy men the guardians of an evolving science, or did they intentionally shroud their discoveries in secrecy, maintaining their sacred role as Europe's original lighthouse keepers? The answer, like the beam from a distant tower, seems always just out of reach, illuminating, but never quite fully known. You slip even deeper into the warm embrace of the train, the gentle cadence of the rails, a lullaby as the story of light moves forward into an age of renewal. The fog outside thins and swirls, and the landscape beyond the glass takes on the character of a Renaissance painting, rugged coasts, bustling ports, and the silhouettes of newly ambitious towers. Here, Europe stirs with the spirit of discovery, invention, and competition, a world eager to harness both old wisdom and bold new ideas. It is the Renaissance, and along the rocky shores of France, Italy, and Spain, engineers and visionaries experiment with new ways to push back the darkness. You sense a growing confidence as cities vie to build taller, brighter, more reliable lighthouses. Some try burning whale oil, others use ingenious systems of mirrors and lenses to concentrate and direct their beacons. Historians still argue whether this was an age of genuine innovation or just a time when ancient tricks were refined and repackaged for ambitious patrons. You can almost hear the hum of busy shipyards, the laughter and calls of sailors, the careful debates among inventors over the best fuel, the most enduring stone. At Genoa, a lighthouse known as La Lanterna is rebuilt in the 16th century with a grand new tower, a marvel of both height and resilience, its flame magnified by polished reflectors. Some claim that Venetian glassmakers renowned for their alchemical secrets invented a kind of lens that could intensify the lantern's glow, though evidence remains tantalizingly elusive. You imagine a keeper's pride as he polishes a hand-blown globe, watching the light shimmer in rainbow hues. Quirky tales surface in the notebooks and letters of this era. In Portugal, a royal engineer once proposed a beacon powered by gunpowder and clockwork, an invention that, according to legend, worked only once before filling the tower with a cloud of acrid smoke and scaring the local seagulls into a frenzied retreat. In Marseille, the city council hired musicians to play through the night at the foot of the lighthouse, believing music would guide home any lost mariner who failed to see the beam. As the train rocks gently, you sense a world teetering between the mystical and the mechanical, eager to solve ancient problems with a new spark of creativity. Debate lingers. Did the Renaissance truly ignite a new era in lighthouse technology? Or was it the patient accumulation of generations finally brought into the light? The answer is elusive, hiding in the interplay of glass and flame, ambition and necessity. You tuck yourself deeper into your blanket, soothed by the idea that every lantern lit in this age, whether dazzling success or smoky failure, brought Europe closer to the beacons that would soon revolutionize the world's coasts, one sweeping arc of light at a time. The carriage glides on the night deepening, and you sense a palpable shift in the air as the age of wooden ships and canvas sails comes into its own. The golden age of sail, a period when the fate of empires and fortunes depended on navigation, unfolds beneath the steady watch of Europe's growing constellation of lighthouses. Beyond the window, the coast is alive with the silhouettes of tall ships, their sails billowing like ghostly wings beneath the stars. And every captain looks to the shore, seeking that first blessed glimmer of light. In this era, the stakes are higher than ever, with ships carrying precious cargoes and daring new trade routes linking continents. The demand for reliable navigation grows urgent. Lighthouses multiply, stretching from the Spanish Basque coast to the wild Orkneys, and their architecture reflects a spirit of experimentation. Historians still argue whether these ambitious projects, often funded by monarchs, merchants, or mariners' guilds, were true public goods or private enterprises wrapped in the guise of charity and civic duty. You picture keepers standing watch through endless nights, their hands blackened from tending lanterns, fueled by whale oil tallow, or even inventive mixtures of fish oil and pitch. In some towers, strange experiments take place. On the rocky Brittany coast, it's whispered that one lighthouse keeper known for his peculiar humor once tried burning dried seaweed to see if the scent would ward off approaching storms. The result, according to local lore, was a night so foul-smelling that both sailors and seagulls kept their distance for weeks. The character of the lighthouse keeper grows more distinct in this age, a solitary but vital figure charged with a sacred trust. Sometimes entire families live in the tower, children learning the rhythms of light and dark as naturally as they do the tides. In certain ports, keepers become local celebrities, honored in parades and toasted in taverns, their success or failure a matter of communal pride or shame. Yet there is also loneliness, the long hours, the wild storms, the nights when a single missed lighting could spell disaster for a ship and all its souls. Debate persists about the motives behind these proliferating beacons. Were they built to safeguard lives, to protect valuable cargo, or to mark territorial claims in contested waters? Some say the answer shifts with each new port and each new storm. But as your train presses on through the velvet dark, you feel the steady thread that links every lantern lit in this era, a commitment to guide, to warn, to keep hope alive through fog, storm, and night. The gentle clatter of the rails echoes that commitment, soothing you further into the story as you travel with those who once watched for the next sweep of light on the far horizon. The rain eases into a fine mist, trailing along the glass like distant breath, and the train's movement grows almost hypnotic. Through the haze of night, you sense a world bustling with rivalry and ambition. Britain, in the throes of transformation, becomes a battleground not just of ships, but of lights. Along the island's jagged coastlines, the landscape is soon dotted with lighthouses, each representing not only safety, but power, profit, and the right to command the sea. In this era, the story of British beacons is shaped by fierce competition. Trinity House, founded in the 16th century, claims authority over all navigational aids in England and Wales, tasked with building, maintaining, and innovating lighthouses for the public good. Yet their monopoly is frequently challenged by enterprising individuals and private groups, some eager to fill gaps in the system, others seeking to profit from the lucrative tolls ships must pay for the privilege of safe passage. Historians still argue who truly owned the light in these years. Was it the mariner's birthright, the crown's privilege, or the entrepreneur's prize? You follow the path of these conflicts along rocky promontories and shifting sands. Sometimes private lighthouse builders win the race, their towers shining defiantly beside Trinity House's sanctioned beacons. In other cases, disputes spiral into legal drama, with courtrooms as stormy as the sea itself. Quirky tales abound at Longstone Lighthouse in the Farne Islands. The keeper's family, led by the famous Grace Darling, became national heroes for rescuing shipwrecked sailors. Their story retold so often, it became as legendary as the light itself. Innovation flourishes under pressure. Competing inventors race to perfect new fuels, reflectors, and mechanical lighting systems. Some towers feature revolving lights or colored lenses to set them apart. Others experiment with fog signals, giant bells, cannons, or even steam-powered whistles that roll across the waves. One eccentric inventor is said to have tested a clockwork-driven lantern that chimed every hour, though local fishermen complained the sound summoned more ghosts than ships. Debate lingers. Did this spirit of competition spur the rapid spread of effective lights, or did it create confusion and duplication, endangering ships with too many or conflicting signals? The question echoes in parliamentary records and keepers' diaries alike, a reminder that even safety can become the subject of rivalry and pride. As your train rounds another rain-slicked curve, the distant beam of a lighthouse sweeps across the fields, a silent testament to the triumphs and the tempests of an age where every light was a claim and every claim a story. The gentle, persistent sound of the rails assures you that the journey through this contested landscape will continue, each flash and shadow guiding you further into the heart of Europe's lighthouse legacy. The train glides onward, its wheels humming quietly, as you are drawn toward the wildest stretches of coastline, where engineering ambition and the raw power of nature collide. In your mind's eye, the English Channel and Celtic Sea are roiling with winter storms, the waves striking jagged rocks with relentless force. Here stands Eddystone, a treacherous reef whose very name is woven into the lore of lighthouses, a place where ingenuity is tested and retested, and where every new tower faces the full fury of the sea. You picture the first Eddystone lighthouse built in 1698 by the audacious Henry Winstanley. Historians still argue whether Winstanley's whimsical design, a sort of fantastical wooden pagoda bristling with iron bands, was bold innovation or charming folly. It stood proudly for just 5 years before a mighty storm swept it into the depths, with Winstanley himself lost to the waves. Yet in failure, it sparked a tradition of perseverance, the drive to build again, better and stronger. Subsequent builders tried stone, then granite, then the interlocking dovetail blocks devised by John Smeaton in 1759, a technique inspired, so he claimed, by the way an oak tree's branches weathered the wind. Smeaton's Eddystone Tower withstood tempests for over a century, its white beacon a symbol of victory against chaos. Still, even this lighthouse would eventually need to be rebuilt, its stones undermined by generations of battering tides. Each new incarnation brought new ideas, new hope, and occasionally new mishaps. Quirky stories abound at Eddystone. One keeper was so troubled by loneliness and the relentless shriek of the wind that he trained seagulls to take messages back to the mainland, their little leg bands delivering notes and requests for extra lamp oil. Another tale claims that during repairs, workers discovered a family of wild rabbits had made a den beneath the lighthouse's stairs, thriving on crumbs and rainwater, until one adventurous rabbit was found, to everyone's delight, calmly sunbathing atop the lantern room. The saga of Eddystone and its successors becomes a lesson in persistence and adaptation, the ongoing battle between light and storm. Debate continues among historians and engineers alike. Which design best defies the sea and do the stones themselves? Remember every wave, every storm, every keeper's quiet vigil. As your train glides past the imagined spray and wind of Eddystone, you sense that in every lighthouse there is a spirit of endurance, a promise that no matter the odds, someone will always light the way. The rhythm of the rails soothes you, drawing you further into this tapestry of invention and resolve as the journey presses deeper into the luminous heart of Europe's coasts. You nestle deeper into your seat, lulled by the ceaseless rocking of the train and the gentle glow of the reading lamp above. The storm outside has softened to a whisper, and the darkness beyond the glass feels infinite, broken only by imagined flashes of distant beams. It is in this peaceful night that you witness a turning point, a revolution in the science of light that will transform not only the way lighthouses shine, but the very reach of their guidance. This is the age of the Fresnel lens. The story unfolds in early 19th century France, where Augustin Jean Fresnel, a quiet mathematician with a restless mind, sets about solving one of the great challenges of navigation: how to cast a lighthouse's beam farther, brighter, and more economically than ever before. Using a series of carefully calculated concentric rings, Fresnel invents a lens that captures and bends light, focusing it into a piercing, almost magical beam that can reach for miles across open water. Historians still argue whether Fresnel's inspiration was truly his alone, or whether it grew from generations of lesser-known inventors, each adding a spark to the fire. You picture the excitement as these new lenses are shipped from Paris, and installed along storm-lashed coasts from Brittany to the Baltic, from rugged Hebridean isles to the windswept lighthouses of Sicily. The keepers become both guardians and engineers, carefully cleaning and calibrating each glass prism, learning to identify the unique rhythm of each flash. Ships begin to recognize the signature of every lighthouse, its sequence of blinks and pauses forming an alphabet of safety and welcome. There are stories of mishaps and marvels. In one remote Irish tower, a shipment of Fresnel lenses arrived packed in straw and wool, only to be unboxed and found crawling with curious mice. One keeper later joked that his was the only lighthouse on the coast that flashed both light and whiskers. In Sweden, the first keeper to see the new lens in action wept with joy, convinced the beam was a blessing sent straight from heaven. This revolution is not without its controversies. Debate lingers. Did the power of the lens create an overconfidence among mariners, leading some to trust the light more than their own judgment? Or did it finally fulfill the promise of a truly safe coastline? The answer flickers like the lamps themselves, sometimes clear, sometimes clouded by memory and myth. As your train glides along the motion and the story blend, the relentless march of invention matched only by the soft persistence of rain. Each lighthouse, newly empowered by Fresnel's genius, becomes a guardian not just of coastlines, but of dreams, safety, and the boundless possibility of travel by night. The gentle swaying of the carriage reminds you of the endless patience that both keepers and builders have carried through the centuries. Beyond the window, dawn threatens on the far horizon, yet the world remains veiled in shadow, illuminated only by the imagined glow of 1,000 beacons. As the story moves into the industrial era, you sense the landscape shifting beneath your feet. Stone gives way to iron, brick yields to concrete, and the silhouette of the lighthouse transforms into something both sturdier and stranger. The 19th and early 20th centuries are an age of material ambition, when engineers and inventors strive to conquer the elements using the latest tools and theories. New towers rise along Europe's most inhospitable shores, their structures forged from cast iron or poured from concrete, their forms sometimes elegant, sometimes purely functional. Historians still argue whether this transition was guided by a love of innovation, the pressure of commercial competition, or simply the relentless demand for greater resilience against the sea. You imagine the clamor of construction, steam cranes lifting massive iron sections into place, workers singing as they bolt panels together on windswept rocks, the scent of tar and hot metal mingling with brine. At places like the Fastnet Rock off Ireland and Heligoland in the North Sea, these new materials prove their worth, outlasting storms that would have toppled older towers. Some keepers are skeptical at first, grumbling about the coldness of iron underfoot, or the echoing clang of footsteps in the night. Others delight in the novelty painting murals on concrete walls, or attaching whimsical weather vanes to lightning rods. Quirky stories accompany these new towers. In the early days of the Maplin Sands Lighthouse in England, the iron pilings were so slippery with seaweed that a particularly agile colony of seals took up residence beneath the keeper's quarters, barking and singing each evening as the lanterns were lit. In France, one lighthouse builder left a personal mark, tiny ceramic cats hidden among the iron braces, supposedly to bring luck and ward off loneliness during long repairs. The debate continues. Did these new materials represent the peak of lighthouse design? Or did they strip away some of the romance and character found in older hand-hewn towers? Some say the soul of the lighthouse lives in its purpose, not its shape or substance. Others mourn the loss of artistry, recalling the patient stonemasons whose chisel marks still speak from granite walls. The train rocks gently onward, the steady sound of progress accompanying your journey. Each new innovation, be it iron concrete or the curious blend of the two, echoes the same promise that wherever the sea may threaten human ingenuity will rise to meet it, sending out a steady light through the storm. The hush of early morning mingles with the carriage's warmth as you slip further into the lived experience of the keepers themselves. With the age of industrial progress, lighthouse keeping becomes both a vocation and a ritual steeped in tradition, solitude, and unspoken camaraderie. Outside, the world remains shrouded in mist, but within your train cabin and within the walls of every lighthouse you sense the gentle, ceaseless rhythm of life ordered by the lamp. Each keeper's day follows a timeless pattern shaped by duty and the endless cycle of night and day. You imagine rising before dawn, winding the lamp's clockwork cleaning lenses until they gleam and logging weather and sea conditions in precise looping script. The work is meticulous, demanding both strength and gentleness. A spilled drop of oil, a missed turn of the mechanism, or a speck of dust on the glass could mean disaster for sailors watching from the darkness. Historians still argue whether this discipline bred a unique kind of mindfulness, or whether the isolation sometimes frayed the minds of even the most steadfast keepers. The solitude is profound. Some keepers serve alongside family sharing meals in cramped kitchens, children playing among ropes and barrels, laughter and light filling the long evenings. Others endure months alone, their only company, the wind, the circling gulls, and the distant pulse of ships. It is said that keepers develop a sixth sense for the moods of the weather, reading every shift in the clouds and the shape of every approaching wave. In some towers, a cherished tradition emerges, the ritual of sending messages in bottles or tossing painted shells into the surf, small tokens of connection with an unseen world. Quirky tales bloom from these quiet lives. At Skerryvore, one keeper spent decades carving intricate chess pieces from driftwood, gifting them to passing sailors who brought news from the mainland. On the Isle of May, keepers devised a code of flags and lantern signals to trade fresh fish bread and stories with neighboring towers across the water, a secret language visible only to those who kept the light. Yet for all its poetry, the life of a lighthouse keeper is not without peril. Storms batter the windows, shaking foundations, and sometimes tragedy strikes a missed signal, an accident, or simply the weight of unbroken silence. Debate continues. Does the lighthouse life foster a sense of peace found nowhere else? Or is it a slow test of endurance, requiring a strength as unwavering as the beam itself? The train sways on the rhythm of rails, echoing the rituals of the keeper's day. With each passing mile, you are gently pulled deeper into their world, a life illuminated not only by duty, but by the persistent, hopeful glow of the lantern. The soft clatter of the rails continues a comforting heartbeat as your journey moves deeper into the secret histories of the light. You begin to notice that hidden among the stories of solitary men, there are other figures tending the lamps. Women whose presence at the lantern has shaped the silent watch in ways both subtle and profound. The mist thickens outside, but within the train, the story grows warmer, richer, illuminated by courage that often went unsung. Throughout Europe's lighthouse history, women have quietly stepped in as keepers, often when storms, war, or tragedy took husbands, fathers, or brothers from their posts. Sometimes their roles were official, sanctioned by maritime authorities. More often, their work was hidden in the shadows of the tower, their names left out of the logbooks. Historians still argue whether these women were seen as true keepers or simply helpers, despite their tireless vigilance and steadfast devotion. You imagine the lantern room at midnight, glass prisms glowing softly as a woman checks the lamp's oil, winds the mechanism, and records each flash in the battered journal left by her late husband. There are stories of daughters climbing icy stairs, of widows bracing themselves against winter gales, of sisters learning to read the weather by the curl of surf and the call of distant gulls. One tale told on the wild Aran Islands speaks of 3 sisters who took turns tending the beacon while singing old sea shanties, their voices mingling with the wind. Local legend claims their melodies could calm even the fiercest storm. Quirky legends abound. In Denmark, a keeper's wife was said to have trained her cat to fetch candles and tools up the spiral staircase, the clever animal soon becoming as famous as the light itself. On the Brittany coast, a young woman alone for months during the Napoleonic Wars is credited with saving an entire convoy by tending the lamp through a blizzard, her courage marked by a single shell embedded in the tower's stone as a quiet memorial. Yet recognition was slow to come. For centuries, regulations forbade women from being listed as official keepers, no matter how many nights they stood watch. Some say the spirits of these women remain in the towers, a comforting presence for those who still tend the light. The debate endures. Were these women merely filling the gaps, or did their resilience and ingenuity shape the very soul of lighthouse keeping, proving that courage and care know no gender? The train glides onward, carrying you past the hidden lives and unheralded heroes whose gentle persistence kept the lamps burning bright and enduring silent light against the vast and sometimes lonely night. The rain taps ever more softly now, as if in respect for the memories gathering around you, the triumphs and tragedies written into every stone tower and windswept rock. Your train drifts through the darkest hours before dawn, and you find yourself journeying through the wild heart of lighthouse history, the storms that defined a century, and the wrecks and rescues that etched these beacons into legend. It is in these moments of crisis that lighthouses are truly tested. Great tempests sweep across the Atlantic and North Sea, turning familiar waters into maelstroms of foam and fear. Ships founder on reefs, their lanterns vanishing in the roar, while those ashore watch anxiously for signs of life. Historians still argue whether more might have been done to prevent the worst disasters, whether better technology, more frequent maintenance, or stricter rules could have spared countless lives. Yet amid the debate, it is the human response to disaster that echoes most clearly through time. You picture keepers at their posts, straining to hold the lamp steady as winds threaten to shatter the glass. In the great storm of 1839, Ireland's coastal towers blazed through the night while families huddled together praying that their father or mother in the lantern room would return safely with the dawn. Stories abound of daring rescues at Small's Lighthouse off Wales. 2 keepers trapped for months by storms and illness signaled with makeshift flags until a passing vessel braved the waves to bring relief. The line between safety and catastrophe is thin. There are tales of tragedy, too. The infamous wreck of the Royal Charter in 1859, when a gold-laden ship broke apart within sight of the Anglesey beacon, and of the Flannan Isles, where 3 keepers vanished into the storm, their fate still a mystery. Some say that in the wildest weather, ghostly lights flicker near the rocks, spirits of those lost or saved forever bound to the shifting boundary between sea and shore. Quirky details brighten even the darkest stories. In some towers, keepers kept pet birds as storm companions, teaching them to whistle the patterns of the fog signal. At Fastnet, a tradition grew of painting the lighthouse's topmost stone gold after every successful rescue, a gleam of hope visible for miles on clear days. The debate endures. Do these episodes of heroism and heartbreak reveal the limits of human skill or the limitless power of human spirit? As your train rocks gently on you, sense that every storm survived and every life saved became part of the collective memory, not just of those who lived by the sea, but of anyone who has ever watched for a light in the darkness. The rails hum a steady, reassuring note, and you are carried onward deeper into the age when the world itself would begin to change, and with it the lighthouses and those who kept them. The sky outside grows lighter, touched by the faintest blush of approaching dawn. Yet inside the train, you remain cocooned in the world between darkness and light. Your journey moves now into an era of remarkable transition, the slow, quiet revolution of automation. Across Europe, from the wild Atlantic cliffs to the tranquil Baltic, the ancient partnership between human and lantern begins to shift as machines take up the old ceaseless watch. In the decades after the World Wars, change arrives in subtle increments. Electric bulbs replace oil lamps. Clockwork and pulleys give way to motors and relays. Foghorns, once wound by hand, are triggered by sensors in the mist. The once crowded keepers' cottages begin to empty. At first, the new technologies seem miraculous. Reliable, tireless, free from the dangers and weariness that had long haunted lighthouse life. Historians still argue whether automation was an inevitable progress or a bittersweet loss eroding the heart of a tradition that was as much about community and character as it was about safety. You picture the early days of these innovations, a keeper at Dungeness flipping a switch for the first time, watching as the lamp ignites instantly, its beam slicing cleanly through the salt air. There are mixed emotions, awe at the power of electricity, sadness at the thought that the night's work is suddenly finished with a gesture. In Denmark, engineers experiment with acetylene gas systems, installing tiny sundials on lantern roofs, so the lights ignite only when darkness falls. On the Portuguese coast, the last resident keeper locks the tower door for good, his belongings carried down the winding stairs as the light continues untouched above. Quirky stories appear even in this age of mechanization. In Norway, one isolated lighthouse becomes famous for its unofficial robotic keeper, a cat named Luna, who patrols the empty halls, and locals claim triggers motion sensors to test the alarms. On the Scottish Isles, some abandoned towers are adopted by seabirds or bats, their nightly flights switching lights on and off, creating mysterious signals that confuse passing ships and delight the village children. Yet the debate lingers. Did the march of automation truly make the sea safer, or did it strip away the sense of responsibility and care that human keepers embodied? Some say that the most dangerous years for mariners coincided not with human error, but with the early glitches of technology. Bulbs failing wires, corroded signals missed in the unfeeling silence of automation. The train rides on each gentle sway, a reminder of how all things change, how progress is both a comfort and a challenge. In this new age, the lighthouses endure, but now they shine for a world that watches from a distance, a world that remembers and sometimes longs for the days when every light had a keeper's hand at its heart. As the sun teases the horizon pale and hesitant, the train's cabin fills with a soft, ambient glow, the kind that gently signals a new day but doesn't quite banish the spell of night. You drift through the liminal hours where history lingers in art and memory, and the lighthouse, once a tool of pure necessity, becomes a symbol, an inspiration, a muse. All across Europe, lighthouses begin to appear not just on charts, but in paintings, poems, and stories. Artists travel to remote coastlines with canvases and easels, capturing the angular grace of towers against storm-racked skies, the drama of waves battering stone, or the serenity of a single beam cutting through the gloom. Writers, too, seize on the metaphor. Lighthouses stand for hope, solitude, vigilance, and the endurance of the human spirit. Historians still argue whether this cultural fascination preserves the true essence of the lighthouse, or transforms it into something more sentimental, even nostalgic, divorced from its harder realities. You sense the resonance of these symbols. Virginia Woolf sets her most poignant meditation on time and memory in a lighthouse's shadow. In France, Monet's brushwork conjures fog and spray with blinding beauty. German filmmakers use the sweep of a lantern beam to create suspense and longing. In Norway, the lighthouse becomes a setting for fairy tales and quiet reflection. Even in music you hear echoes, faint chimes, mournful horns, and lullabies that mimic the rhythm of the sea. There are quirky tales behind the art. In Portugal, a famed painter became obsessed with the ever-changing color of a particular lighthouse at dawn, returning every year for a decade until he finally finished his masterpiece, then promptly gave it away to the local keeper as a thank you for nightly cups of tea. In the Netherlands, a children's book tells of a mouse who tends the lamp after the humans leave its nightly adventures beloved by generations. As you watch the landscape scroll by, you realize that lighthouses have come to mean many things to many people. Safety, longing, warning, or simply the quiet joy of endurance. They become markers, not only on maps, but in the heart, a place of guidance and reflection, a setting for stories of loss, courage, or homecoming. Debate continues. Does art and storytelling keep the memory of the lighthouse alive more vividly than technology ever could? Or does it soften the truth, making the harsh realities easier to bear and easier to forget? The answer perhaps lies somewhere in between, flickering like lamplight across a painted sky. The train continues its tranquil path. Your own reflection now faint in the window. The outside world softly aglow as the narrative of lighthouses settles into the realm of shared imagination, an enduring light that burns on long after the last lantern is tended. The train glides on the morning brightening with a hush that feels both new and ancient, a fresh page in the ongoing chronicle of Europe's shores. With the rise of modern awareness, the story of lighthouses turns from one of innovation and solitude to a movement of remembrance and preservation. You sense the deepening hush as the world begins to look back, treasuring the guardians of the past, determined not to lose their silent wisdom to the relentless tide of progress. In the 20th and 21st centuries, countless lighthouses face abandonment, threatened by erosion, neglect, or the advance of new navigation technologies. Yet from the Orkney Islands to the coast of Sicily, local communities, historians and lovers of the sea rally to their defense. Some towers are restored stone by stone, their lantern rooms returned to gleaming clarity, their mechanisms lovingly repaired. Others are transformed into museums, cultural centers, cozy guest houses, or studios for artists and writers seeking inspiration at the edge of the world. Historians still argue what should be preserved and what must be allowed to fade. Should every light be kept burning, every mechanism maintained, or is it enough to save a few, letting the rest live on in memory and photograph? The debate is lively, echoing through preservation societies and government councils, mingling with the voices of volunteers, who sweep the stairs and polish the brass for no reward but the chance to keep history alive. You are drawn into quirky and moving tales of rescue. In Sweden, a group of school children raises funds to save their local lighthouse, selling painted shells and hosting seaside plays. In Spain, a retired mariner devotes his twilight years to leading tours of his childhood beacon, sharing stories of gales and rescues with anyone who will listen. In Ireland, an abandoned tower is adopted by a flock of sheep, whose gentle grazing keeps the approach free from thorns, earning them the honorary title of keepers. As you gaze at the softening sky, you sense the lighthouses themselves are changing. No longer only guardians of mariners, they become guardians of memory, symbols of continuity in a world of constant change. Children race up spiral staircases on school trips, their laughter echoing through stone halls. Artists capture the ever-shifting play of light and shadow on the tower walls. Couples exchange vows under ancient lantern rooms, promising to be each other's guiding star. Yet, the debate endures. Is preservation an act of reverence, nostalgia, or necessity? Should the light always be kept burning? Or is it sometimes enough simply to remember that it once shone? As your train glides toward the final reaches of this long, luminous journey, you feel the weight and comfort of these questions, each as gentle and persistent as the sea itself. The world outside is softly golden now, sunlight glinting on the wet rails and the glistening grass beyond the train's windows. You sense the hush that comes at the end of a long journey, a peaceful moment heavy with reflection as the story of Europe's lighthouses draws near its last watch. The train's gentle rocking feels slower, as if it too is reluctant to let go of the quiet magic that has accompanied you through centuries of flame and fog, invention and solitude. In this final stretch, you travel not only through time, but through meaning. Lighthouses today stand as more than navigational aids. They are icons of hope, nostalgia, and resilience. Some still cast their beams over dark waters, their lights automated but steadfast, while others glow only for visitors, their stories inscribed in plaques and whispered on guided tours. A few have become cherished ruins, windows open to salt winds, stones softened by moss, their very silence a kind of light for the imagination. Historians still argue whether lighthouses have outlived their purpose or have simply evolved into new forms of guidance, shining over communities as beacons of memory, inspiration, and resolve. Some believe that as long as ships cross the sea, even in an age of satellites and digital charts, a few towers must remain vigilant, an unbroken chain stretching from the first clifftop bonfire to the last electric beam. Others say the true lantern endures not in the lantern room, but in the human heart, in every act of care, remembrance, and connection. You catch glimpses of the present and the future, engineers experimenting with green energy to power lamps, artists crafting light installations that echo the turning beams, and young keepers, some descended from generations past, training for the rare posts that remain. Quirky ideas abound in Norway. A group of writers gathers yearly in an old lighthouse, composing stories through the night as the sea rumbles below. In Portugal, a new beacon is built to honor both the ancient mariners and the modern search and rescue teams, a living bridge between eras. The final debate lingers gentle as the morning mist. Are lighthouses destined to become mere monuments to a vanished way of life? Or do they embody a hope that outlasts every storm? Perhaps as your train slows, you sense the answer is both. That in every lighthouse, every journey, every quiet watch through the night, there is a light that will never truly go out. The train glides almost imperceptibly, now wheels tracing the last easy curves of the track. Sunlight pours softly through the windows, warming your hands, your face, your heart. The rhythm of the rails becomes a gentle fading lull, and the world outside hushes to a serene stillness, sea cliffs and sky blending into a single peaceful horizon. Let the story of lighthouses recede now like the tide pulling gently from the sand. You feel the warmth of your blanket, the comfort of your seat, the soft breath of air within the cabin. There are no more storms to weather tonight, no lamps to polish or flames to tend. There is only the safety of this moment, the quiet embrace of the train, and the knowledge that, like a lighthouse, you are sheltered and guided even in the darkness. Let your thoughts become lighter, your eyelids heavier, until you are drifting, carried by the steady hum beneath you, rocked by memory and imagination, all the way toward rest. Trust that even as the story fades, its light will remain a gentle beam forever steady, calling you home through any night. Sleep well, dear traveler. The journey is over for now, but the comfort and wonder linger on soft as morning, lasting as the tide.